Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of #EveryRoleMatters Roundtable. I am here with the lovely Holly and the fantastic Adam Davis from GametoGrow. I am going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then we will get straight into the topic. Holly, why don't you go first?
Hi, everyone. I'm Holly, Holly Conrad on Twitter, wecrowinghens everywhere else. I stream and play games, and I'm also Strix on Acquisitions Incorporated. So if you like RPG things, that's what I do there.
Fantastic. Adam?
My name is Adam Davis. I am a founder and executive director of the nonprofit organization GametoGrow. Our mission is the use of games of all kinds for therapy, education, and community growth. We have over 120 participants every week all over the world play Dungeons and Dragons in our therapeutic social skills groups for insight, growth, and change. We have a training program that I co-run with Elizabeth Kilmer, our director of education and training. So I talk a lot and do a lot of work around the intentional application of games.
Absolutely. Elizabeth was actually on one of our previous episodes. So
awesome. I'm happy to follow in her footsteps.
Absolutely. So our theme today, our topic is going to be social media and anxiety. So kind of the inner workings of both of those. So the first question that I have is kind of a general question for both of you is, what is your personal experiences, professional experiences with suicide prevention and awareness?
I don't want to go first.
My personal experience with mental health in general is I've long been an advocate for people getting mental health help, and that's not restricted to people who are in crisis as much as I think that is when we often realize how much we need that extra support. I'm an advocate that we all get therapy. I'm a big advocate for destigmatizing, talking to someone, getting the help that we need. I see a therapist and I'm very open about it. It's helpful, I think, for everybody to get that extra person who's in a position of being trained and able to provide that support. I think there's nothing but good that can come from that. So I'm a huge advocate for just mental health care in general for all of us. As far as my training goes, I have a master's in education with a specialization in drama therapy. And I'm a big believer in the body as a resource and where we store a lot of our experiences. And so I advocate that people who are to not think of everything as just their thoughts, but where in their bodies they store and carry a lot of the struggles that they have, and encourage an embodied response to that as well.
I've actually had therapy that focuses on that before. Yes. So yeah. In fact, I'm like similar. I'm very, very open about mental health and things like that. Pretty much ever since I started like doing internet stuff. And I think it's really important to just let people be aware that all of the more or less like the performative aspect of social media isn't reality, and that a lot of us are seeking therapy, and it is okay. And it is okay to be on medication. It is okay to be taking care of yourself. And I tend to talk about that a lot. And it's a double-edged sword, because I think it makes you very open to criticism, and it also makes you very like open, because that's a good thing. It's good to be open, but it's as far as social media goes, I think it's kind of an interesting spot, you know.
They say, I read somewhere that it's an average of 7 years it takes someone to actually find a therapist.
It takes a long time.
I'll definitely say that was true for me. I was a classroom teacher, a full-time classroom teacher, on top of running a nonprofit organization, and was very stressed and had a really hard time. And a lot of things in my life were sort of falling apart, and I didn't have the resources to handle it, and didn't have the support structures that I needed to handle it. And it took one of my good friends and coworkers at the time, who came in every day and handed me a card of a therapist, and they said, here's a number, you should call this person. And then eventually there was one of those days when, I don't know if we have any teachers who are going to be watching this, but I was curled up into a ball on my classroom floor, worried about the outcomes of the kid, how well I would possibly serve these kids who are relying on me. You know, the pressures of trying to be a full-time classroom teacher on top of the work that I was doing outside of that was a lot, and I needed support. And got some of that from my peers, but it was a gift to myself to realize that I deserved having the help that a therapist can provide. It wasn't an act of weakness. It was an act of, hey, I deserve this. I'm going to actually go to this therapist and then get better because I deserve it. It was a real shift in the mentality of it. It wasn't, oh, I have failed so much, I need a therapist. It was, hey, I care about these outcomes enough that I'm going to go see a therapist to make sure that I can, because I care about these kids and all of that. So I'm one of those cases that took me 7 years, I think, before I finally saw a therapist. And I'm so glad that I am.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I feel like similar is that I grew up like in a really like unhealthy household, and I didn't get therapy until I was like 21, like 22 probably, because I just thought everything was going on was fine. It was not. And so I finally said, when I saw like the therapist for the first time, like they blew my mind, because they were like more or less teaching me like, you do have value, you can say no, you like, and just that changed my whole life, like completely. And ever since then I've been in therapy, and it's been really, I mean, of course, different therapists depending on where I live. And sometimes like, that's another thing that I think is so important, is that people can switch therapists if they don't feel like they've connected with someone, or they don't feel like they have the right tools or whatever. It's totally okay to explore. And that's something I always try to be open about too, like that it's okay to find the person who fits you. Took me a long time, like to find, like wherever I live, to find people who I felt like vibed.
Yeah, that's what is also super, super important, is finding the right therapist. Just because you go the first time to somebody doesn't mean you have to see them forever. If they're not a good fit for you, definitely switch it out. One of the most important parts when you see a therapist is your alignment. The therapeutic alliance between the client and the therapist is more important in many cases than a lot of other factors. So if you trust your therapist and you work well together, that's so important, such that if you are seeing a therapist that you're not working well with, you should see a different therapist. I mean, of course, there's all kinds of caveats to that. So yeah, take my advice with an asterisk on it, but.
Absolutely. So kind of talking about therapy, but leading into kind of your mental health and anxiety. Holly, you have a large social media presence. How has that affected your mental health, your anxiety, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So this is kind of the question that was going to be hard to answer for me, but I want to, because I think it's a good lesson. I think it's something that's really helpful. So like when I had that big drama, I had a big drama happen, and I don't deal well with making people unhappy. One of my, like, growing up, like I had a very abusive mom, very narcissistic, like no boundaries. Like my job was to make her happy. And she was also handicapped. So she had MS, couldn't walk. So I had a lot of issues with that. And when this big explosion happened, the people who were saying things like, they were literally saying like, kill yourself. Like you need to, like, I mean, I don't even want to, like, imagine something terrible and it was said. And it was like how my anxiety is, I couldn't deal with that. Like and I was also in between meds at the time that all of this happened. So I was actually taking a new medication when all of that happened. So I was already in a place where I couldn't really process things. So I felt self-harm. Like I was like, I'm going to self-harm. So I had a friend that also, like, we were both, very into mental health, things like that. And she was like, yeah, we're going to take you in. So I actually went to the inpatient here in Seattle for, I think it was like 4 or 5 days. I'm not sure, but it was actually really, really helpful. And I'm really glad that I did it, even though it was really scary, because it took me away from social media. It put me in a safe place. It let me talk to other people. It let me talk to doctors. And the strangest thing is that it was every single professional I've talked to since that happened has said that social media that this is something we don't know how to deal with. That we as human beings, number one, don't know how to deal with, because we're not used to getting that much information to us, whether it be negative or positive or whatever. We're not used to that. So especially if you already have these like predisposition, like pre-existing conditions, more or less, of having anxiety and depression and PTSD from past childhood trauma, these sorts of things can exacerbate all of that. So like these past 2 years have been a really interesting, like crazy, the huge, not crazy, that's ableist, not saying that. I'm trying so hard not to say that. I'm saying like they've been like,
Wild.
just why, yeah, just, well, like kind of like, just like a whole different journey, to more or less like reinvent like everything about how my mental health was. So it's like and even just now I'm like starting to feel better, because it when you have all of these negative social media things coming at you so much, especially if you have this anxiety and fear, it starts to cause you to feel like you're like attacked all the time. And so that brought in some OCD for me. So I would check these websites saying mean things. Still to this day, they do it, but like I switched medications and finally, and I just now, like literally the past month, have just started feeling better, because it's been this whole thing of getting therapy. I found a special trauma therapist. I found like, and I've been trying to work on it. But like, again, everyone I've spoken to has said, we don't have the tools for this. We don't have the tools to help people who, regardless of what happened to them, to deal with a barrage of internet hatred. Because some people might have that I don't know if it's a neurodivergency or whatever it is. Like someone might have OCD and not be able to stop looking at it, and without medication or without certain therapy. So I think there's a lot that we need to learn, like specifically about how social media and how, if something like really, really impactful happens, how we can deal with that on the mental health spectrum. If that makes sense.
Absolutely, for sure. Adam, do you have any kind of insight on that?
I don't have that many followers on social media. And part of that is I don't know if I would say it's a struggle necessarily. I do watch my follower count, and I know that that's part of like it can get a little pathological at times, because I will like focus on these like sort of experiences that I have. I will tweet something, and then I will like see if it gets a response, and then I'll wait, and then I'll look at it a little bit later, and then I will like attribute some sort of personal value to whether or not people thought my joke was funny or whatever. And then I have to do a lot of critical self-analysis on where I'm placing my value. And that's I definitely am guilty of that. And I have read studies that'll show that that's not unique to me. That's a very common phenomenon, that people will start attributing value to whatever their response is. And
you're getting serotonin from that too. You're
getting
absolutely.
That. Yeah. Like when I see the like or retweet, I have a positive association with those things. When I hear that sound and I see and I do have the notifications enabled, because I like that, right? That this is my lizard brain being reinforced when I see all these things. And when it doesn't, it's worse when I have the opposite feeling when I don't get that kind of reinforcement. There was like my funniest tweet ever, got like 5 people got it and they liked it. And I was like, this is funny. This is so funny, and nobody gets it. Now I'm alone. And right now nobody likes me. And that is not the appropriate response to a tweet being sent out at like 11:30 at night on a weird evening. So I think my personal experience is such that I feel like at times on the edge. And the thing that I think about in terms of social media for my own sake is the power of an avatar. And I have a public persona. I mean, I have a personal life and I have a professional life, and my professional life exists in a public sphere. I do a lot of presentations. I have a very friendly family first kind of or family facing persona. I teach children, I teach adults. I have this sort of persona, and I also have my other life. And it is hard sometimes when I don't know the difference between those two, because I'm playing out my persona. And sometimes that bleeds into other parts of my life, and I have to sort of navigate that experience as well. And social media makes that worse, because social media is my public persona. And I used to have like a live journal in the 90s.
I did too, yeah. I had a
like,
Zanga.
Oh yeah, yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
And like that was my like radical authenticity, radical vulnerability. And I don't do that on social media anymore, because I have a public facing persona that represents a nonprofit organization designed to help kids. So there is a whole lot of navigating what's me and what's the me that's designed to get likes and retweets. And that is like a real interesting phenomenon. And I have deleted lots of tweets before sending them that were funny jokes, but maybe they wouldn't go. And during the election, I was like tweeting along with the events that were happening in the election, and I lost a lot of followers, and that is okay with me. I had this like revelation where I was like, if you don't like my hot takes on this, perhaps you shouldn't be following me anyway. But that
yes.
yeah. So that's been my main experience with it, is just navigating that. And I see the impacts of some of this on my colleagues, certainly navigating the same thing, trying to vie for attention in an attention economy where we're all trying to, make sense and get followers. And there's a whole complicated world of that as well. And I see it in the kids that I work with too.
Yeah, that's something it's a really interesting thing, because it's like, I never developed another persona. I never developed, so like being like influencer, I hate that word, so influencer, but like I never became anyone else. I was just me. And that opened me up to be more vulnerable, because I don't know, because again, I assume it's like, I'm just being me. And I'm like, no, everyone knows I'm just being me. And it's like, but they actually don't. Like, it was a two-way road of assumption. It's like, I assume people, they knew that I was being me and they knew I was being authentic, but there's no way for people to tell that. And I didn't even realize that in my ignorance. I was just like, no, but I'm just being me. But it's like, there really is no way for people to tell. And there really is. So it's really up to you, like, or up to all of us to put out what, like, again, like what is safe for people. And I definitely, that's why I think like the vulnerability is so hard, because it's like, you can be vulnerable, but that's not always going to be a positive experience for someone reading it. Maybe it's for you and you're like, I feel better, I said something, but like, it might not be a positive experience for the audience looking at it. So it's a really hard space to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to hold back a lot of things on social media, because I navigate that as intentionally as I can, to try to make sure that anything that I do or say on the internet is a reflection of the organization that I run. Or when I was a classroom teacher, we got a lot of trainings that said, you're a classroom teacher, like there are teachers who get fired for drinking a beer on Facebook, so that doesn't mean don't drink beer. It means don't drink beer and take pictures of yourself and then put that out there. So like no concert photos, all these kinds of things. It became like, okay, that's over here, and then public persona is over here, because social media is this sort of pervasive phenomenon where nothing can be deleted off the internet. So you better be careful what you put out there. And I'm also lucky enough, I'm old enough that a lot of my stupid years were before the social media was really a thing. I feel very grateful that I didn't have social media in high school. I feel very grateful that social media didn't become popular until really I was mostly out of college. So I've looked at studies about social media and the impact of it, and there's a lot of misconstrued data around screen time and how that's not really a thing as much as it's talked about as a thing. But there are some correlations between social media use and increases in anxiety and depression, and especially for teen girls.
Oh God, I'm sure.
And I can only,
I'm sure.
I can only imagine my master's thesis was about bullying. And the bullying research that I was doing was 2010 or so. So social media was out, but smartphones were still kind of new.
Yeah.
And now it's a whole new landscape where you've got access to these things in your pocket all the time. And it's a wild world that we're now embarking on. Like you were saying, Holly, there's we don't know how our brains can handle this, and they probably can't yet. And we have to set some intentional boundaries on how we work around these things.
Yeah. I mean, like literally, it's like I've had psychiatry appointments where like they know all the stuff that happens. They have it all in the record. And they're just like, yeah, we don't know. We don't know like how to deal. Like in the future, we're probably going to look back on this and be like, this should have never been allowed. It's like, it's literally like public. It's like the throwing someone in the stocks and in like the 1800s or 1700s. And that was made illegal because like those things caused people to have horrendous like mental anguish. So I can imagine how about like in high school, you do something embarrassing or anything that a normal human being does, because we all make mistakes, everyone finds out, and your whole high school's public shaming you like on Instagram or something like that would be terrible and so damaging for anyone.
Yeah, I cannot imagine, especially the other interesting thing about bullying, I guess is hard to say that, but the other research about bullying that was really interesting in this concept, or in this context, was the fact that girls specifically, this is why girls struggle with this so much more than young boys do, is boys tend, when they have bullying experiences, they're like aggression. It's like physical aggression, which is generally easier to observe. Teachers don't always do it, principals don't always do it, but it's easier to observe. And females traditionally, according to this research, have relational aggression, which is manipulating, like sly comments, things that are much harder to see. And then you take that and then you put it on social media, and it's faster, more sinister, and harder for people to observe and seek, and harder for people to intervene and track and protect. That it is so important, I think, that we critically reflect on how we want to take care of our young people in the context of them growing up in this environment where even myself, like I'm not that old, I'm a little gray, but I'm not that old. And we still don't know what it's like to be at that age with this technology so accessible. So we need to really do some hardline listening when it comes to how we interact on this level.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And I see it happening on Twitter. I see how people are I see how old they are, and they're like 16. And I'm like, this is not okay. you know, I was like reading Animorphs at 16. Like we need to chill. Like this is bad.
Yeah. Whew. I'm so glad I didn't have access to those things.
Oh, yeah. It would have been sad. It just would have been sad song lyrics or something.
Yeah, well, that's what my my live journal was for.
Yeah.
That was for what was it? Dashboard confessional lyrics on the Zanga.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For sure. Well, I'm in my senior year of high school right now, so I can definitely contest to the fact that teen girls are not the nicest creatures on the planet, especially with social media. And I've had a lot of my own personal experiences with that. So definitely something that I understand there. So the next question, and the last question for this part, is for Adam. And we've kind of touched on it already a little bit. But so what specific pressures do you think are put on people through social media? Like, can you pinpoint a couple of the major ones?
Well, I would say what I already said earlier around our avatar and this need to be this thing we're pretending to be in order to get the affection of other people. And I think ultimately that undermines our self-concept, and it undermines our self-respect in a way, because we then lose track of our own values and we start putting other people's values ahead of our own values. That is something that can be very pervasive, like I talked about earlier. One of the other things is we've heard of FOMO, fear of missing out. One of the things that we see a lot with social media is FOBLO, which is fear of being left out. When you see your friends on social media doing something, and you wonder, I wasn't invited to that, or now I'm feeling left out. Now I'm fearing that they don't like me, and now what can I do to help gain some value in their eyes? And that once again sets us up to be devaluing ourselves and wondering why we're not good enough. And all of those things can be so much more problematic when we have instant access to being able to see what our friends are doing because they're posting on social media. And the fact that these things are in our pockets, we're also navigating, I don't know if anybody saw that movie, what was it called? Social Dilemma. Documentary that came out a while back.
That was amazing and really sad.
Totally. And I
sad.
had to think critically about my use of my cell phone after that, because we have to remember is that we are the product on these systems. We are not the users, we are the product. And so when we are using Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or any of them, really, we are a product being sold to advertisers, and their interest is to keep us on their platform. And so it is very important to consider that not using those, not responding to that social media as an act of defiance. It's an act of freedom. It's like a revolutionary act right now to say my time is my own to determine what I want to do with it. And I think because we're in an attention economy, we have to be like, the one resource we don't have, we will never get back, is time. And we give more and more and more to social media, where we are, especially in quarantine now, like doom scrolling through Reddit or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever those things are. Like, please just give me a picture of a cat so I can stop thinking about the stuff around me. That is, there is a balance to all things here, and we go too far down that road and we've anesthetized ourselves, and we're not able to see what's around us because we're scrolling. There is a real value to the connections we can have through these platforms when we have authentic relational connections with people. There's no one who will be more on the mountaintop screaming about how important human connection is. But then we have to remember that this is tricking our brains into thinking we have human connection, but it's like the Diet Coke of human connection. Your body might think it's sugar and respond like it's sugar, but you never actually get satisfied with that. And so you end up kind of just digging yourself deeper into a hole of needing social connection, authentic relational social connection, which is really hard to do in 280 characters.
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. Human connection is super important, although very hard to have in a pandemic.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that I think we all need to kind of work on in the pandemic, is ways to get human connection other than just tweeting on Twitter or posting on Instagram or something like that. But yeah, so that is the end of part 1 of this episode. So thank you to everyone who has watched. We're going to do some outros now, and make sure you check out part 2 when it is posted. Let's start with Adam. Make sure that you say where you are on social media. Make sure that people know who you are if they haven't figured that out through this episode yet.
So my name is Adam Davis, founder and executive director of GametoGrow. You can follow GametoGrow at GametoGrow. You can follow me personally on social media on Twitter at Sparks for Sharks. And I'm not that interesting, but feel free to follow me and give me that little boost that I need to quell my self-doubt.
Thank you very much, Adam. Holly?
Hi everyone, I'm Holly. I'm at Holly Conrad on Twitter and wecrowinghens everywhere else. And actually I'm on Commander Holly on Instagram, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, I think I just wanted to add one thing, and it's not that the negative comments, honestly, like, they're out there, but the positivity and the positive comments are so important. And I think, like, I always tend to focus on, like, oh, it's so icky, but like the people that go out of their way to show kindness and show respect on social media make such a huge difference. And I just want to say that because all of you are important and kindness is important.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Make sure you spread the kindness and some love a little bit each day. It helps in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you everyone who watched. My name is Fenway Jones, also known as Fenway the Teen DM on Twitter, and Jasper's Game Day everywhere else. Make sure to check these two lovely people out. I will post all of their links in the description, and stay tuned for part 2. Remember, you are not a critical failure and you do not have to roll initiative alone. Thank you so much.